this is this project will really speak to that. Next slide, Brie. So my essential question was, how can queer identified school crisis leaders show up for the pivotal and urgent work that is needed to support LGBTQ youth while also safeguarding one's own spirit and wellness? So I know that I've garnered some of the wisdom that I've built over the years and learned from colleagues, but I really wanted to lean in and see how could we answer this question. So my process was first to tap into providers within Solano County. And so I built a listening circle really based on restorative practice work, and invited colleagues who identified as LGBTQ to come to a listening circle space. You can see some of the sample questions that I had. So we came together, and that was a relatively small group, but varied, and we had some principals in the space, we had counselors in the space, we had case managers in the space, and so led them through the questions, and really had an opportunity to share out our experience. And so from that, I really synthesized the themes that I heard, built a larger presentation, then went to a conference in Anaheim, California, which it was a leadership conference for school administrators, but it was a Pride, it was called Lead with Pride. So it was an LGBTQ specific conference. So in that space, I had over 30 individuals who came and really made it an interactive. It wasn't just me up lecturing. It was really interactive to get at, here's the themes that I had heard locally. What have you experienced and what can you add to? And so that's the work I've done thus far. I'm continuing to take that and synthesize, and I'm hoping to do some work with SCRR to get in front of a national audience, to share some of the messaging, and continue to build that affinity with other LGBTQ providers. And so next slide, I'll share the key themes that rose up out of this work with my colleagues. So I think first and foremost was the importance of allyship. And what I appreciated was when I put the call out to my Solano colleagues, I had a number of allies who outreach and said, oh, can we come? And then having conversation with them, like this really is about the LGBTQ experience, but I appreciate that you want to be involved. And having conversations with them about what can that look like for you to get involved. And then when I went to the Pride conference, I was surprised to see probably about 80% of the attendees were allies. And while I appreciate having LGBTQ only space, to see that many administrators were funded by their districts and school sites to go to a conference that was specific on supporting LGBTQ students, I thought was phenomenal. And what I heard time and again from LGBTQ individuals is that we need allies to take leadership roles, and that we need to not ask them to do so, but we need to task them to do so, that we are reliant upon them. So I have one colleague who I believe is in this space with me now, who was going to be doing an LGBTQ 101 presentation. And prior to even going into the classroom, she was really upfront around telling her heterosexual colleagues or cisgender colleagues, you need to take the lead. If something starts to go south, that cannot be me. I cannot be wounded in that space in that way. I need you to step up. And I think that permission was something that I heard reverberated again and again, that we need our heterosexual cisgender colleagues to step in. In regards to systemic support, definitely if systems are setting themselves up as an ally, it makes it that much easier for us as teachers, counselors, providers, to be out and role models for our youth. So the importance of systems stepping up and leaning into systems. So whether it's ed code, legal precedents, funders who have some expectations assigned, that if schools aren't doing what they are supposed to do, tapping into those other sources to pressure them. If there's an ed code that says you have to do some LGBTQ training in your health class, lift that up so that the system does what it needs to do. So definitely the structures that we can have in place around us make it easier and safer for us to do the work we need to do that's disseminated to our young people. So the power of story. that also just aligns with being able to be out, telling our story all the way back to our own childhoods amongst each other, and definitely for students. So every time that we can be out in front of a student and role model in front of a young person, it gives them that hope. It gives them that affinity of somebody else has been through this, who I can now look up to. So there was somebody who had shared in one of our folk in the circle, and the quote was, "It's because it was so hard growing up, and it's because that it's still so hard now that I have to keep coming out and telling my story." So returning to our why consistently can, even in the hard moments, lift us up in this work. Affinity. So when we did the listening circle, many people said, this is the first time that I've been in space with other LGBTQ individuals being asked these questions and sharing my story of what it's been like professionally. And so the importance of ongoing, continuous connection with other people who are doing the work and who can share in the experience, even if it comes from a different viewpoint, just understanding who we are together. And so our listening circle is absolutely kind of a touchstone, a first step for ongoing coming together in affinity professionally, and then looking at what that can look like personally. And then lastly, radical self-care. And I borrow that term from our leader here at Solano County Office of Education, Dr. Nicola Parr, who says a team has to have radical self-care and has to lift that up and prioritize it. We want to see it on your calendars. We want to ensure that you're leaving work at work, spending time with family and friends. So not just the self-care that we all say we're going to do, eating healthy, exercising, but really how are you leaning in to caretaking so that you can show up for the work day after day? How are you holding yourself accountable, your colleagues accountable, your team accountable, your agency accountable? And so that's kind of the synthesis of the themes that I heard throughout around how to sustain in doing this work. And I know time is of the essence, so I'm going to pass it off to Mariela.
Oh, you're doing great. And Camden, did you want me to share your handout with folks in the chat? Would that be a helpful?
Yes, absolutely. So what Bree is going to put in the chat is the listening circle guidelines that I utilized, that you are welcome to pull together your own colleagues and follow that model as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Camden. I'm so encouraged and inspired. And I think we always talk, right, at SCRR about the importance of pulling in members of the community that we are serving and listening and elevating and uplifting their voice. And I think you synthesized your work doing that so beautifully. And as a note for folks on the call, we're going to go through each of the presentations, hear from all three of the fellows, and then we'll have space at the end for questions and comments and celebrations and claps and whatever joy we want to give to the fellows. So hold on to those things, jot them down on a sticky note, and we'll make space for them at the end. And then that being said, I will pass it over to Mariela.
Good morning. I'm going to set my own timer because kind of special about that. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share about what we've actually been working on since the very beginning. This was even before the opportunity to become a fellow was a conversation. What actually happened was at the beginning of this school year, this being my second year as a principal at Toltecalli High School, there were, obviously as a principal, I needed to come up with, what were my goals? What were the things that I wanted to accomplish for this school year? And one of the main things that I really wanted to provide my team, especially with all the challenges that we experienced during the first school year as a principal, was a safe space for us to be able to process as a team. And so I reached out to SCRR and they partnered us with Bree, who has been beyond amazing. There aren't appropriate words to say how amazing she was. And they were able to create a program for us for the whole school year. And so what my presentation is about is the experience that I've had as a leader and feedback from my team, from their experiences in participating in a monthly professional development session on what it's been like to have SCRR on our campus as part of the conversations that we've had. So thank you so much, Bree, for being such an amazing part of this. Toltecalli High School is an alternative high school. We are located in Tucson, Arizona. We have, give or take, about 150 students. But because we are an alternative high school, we have students that, for the most part, are struggling to make it in what is considered a regular high school, and so they come to our high school. They struggle. A lot of the struggles that they have to do with food and housing insecurity, community violence, unhealthy relationships, a lot of trauma. And so within the community, when we are looking at who we want as part of our team, be it teachers, be it the counselor, be it whomever it is, we want to make sure that we are honoring the needs that our students bring so that we're able to provide them with the services that they need. And this is not just about academics. This is also about social emotional support. So one of the main reasons why I invited SCRR on our campus was because I can have these conversations with my team. I do have a background in mental health, but I felt that it would be more intentional if I wasn't leading these conversations. And it was somebody that has the experience of being on a campus, but wasn't here on the day-to-day and was able to provide that neutral opportunity for safe spaces. Needless to say, it has been an absolutely wonderful journey for our team. Some of the comments, because I was able to give my team a survey about, certain questions. Some of the comments I will be sharing with you throughout my presentation, but having these professional development sessions really was talking about trauma informed. And let me be very specific. We weren't talking about kids. We were focusing on the staff. And I think that's very important to note because mostly every professional development on a school campus is always focused on a student, right? How can we be better educators? It's always student centered, which is great. But a lot of times we forget that the greatest asset that we have on campus is the staff. And if we're not taking care of our staff, then they're not going to be able to be the amazing educators that I know that they truly are. So it was important to talk about grief. It was definitely important to talk about safety. There is a lot of violence on our campus. This school year alone, the first 6 weeks of school starting, we had a violent event, be that a fight, be that some kind of violent event on campus. So it was very important for, as a team, to be able to identify what it means to feel safe within our own bodies, within our environments, and on campus, definitely. And then because our students are coming in with so much trauma, how are we able to, within those experiences, still be able to be effective educators? So to me, it was very important to acknowledge that we do have these challenges within our student population, but because we're humans, we've also experienced our own traumas. And many times people bring it into campus and are unaware that they're getting triggered or don't have the coping mechanisms in place in order to be able to address them. So that was the point of having SCRR on campus. So some of the great takeaways, and these are actually comments from the survey that I gave my team, which everyone responded to. And please keep in mind, throughout the school year, out of the 20 positions, 13 of them we've had to hire, whether because they were new positions or because we lost some staff and we had to rehire. So potentially there's a lot of turnover on our campus, and this was also an asset that I wanted to provide, a benefit that I wanted to provide our team to be able to have this safe space. A lot of what we did was awareness of, yes, students have trauma, they've experienced it, they bring it into the classroom, but how am I responding to it? And do I have the necessary resources in order to respond to it? And a lot of the aha moments were, you know what? Today I'm not in a great space and I need help. And it was giving staff permission to say, you know what, you don't have to be the hero every time. It's okay to, in our group chat, say, you know what, I need help, I need support. And that's okay because you got triggered, because your emotional bandwidth is not there today. And so having these conversations without me needing to lead them and just being a participant and being able to share my own experience was amazing, because I was able to learn so much more that probably I wouldn't have learned about my team, as well as giving me permission to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I get triggered as well. I don't always have it. As leaders, we are told and taught and trained that, regardless, you always have to have it together, but we're also human, and that's not necessarily possible. But definitely staff was able to reflect how stress and trauma, and if you are an educator, you know that both of these are always there, how stress and trauma can affect the whole child, and not just the whole child, but the whole human. Also, the fact that since this was a program that was specifically for our campus, Bree was able to bring a lot of personalization to the content that she would help us present or was presenting. So it didn't feel like it was somebody coming in and had no idea what our campus was about. SCRR did an amazing job of saying, you know what, we are hearing what you are going through, the challenges that you're facing, and the offerings that we give you are going to be focused on being able to help you, not me, but the whole team, be able to address and at least have a safe space to talk. There's definitely a lot more work that we need to do, but I think that this is a great first start, because staff was able to acknowledge that they don't always have to keep it together, and that it's okay to reach out for support and ask for help. Also, sometimes staff were not ready to share, and that was okay. And it wasn't just because we were providing the space to, it wasn't necessary that everybody had to share. And I think that that's important, because there are going to be times when people are just not ready to share. It's too fresh or whatever it might be. So I think we can go to the next slide. So my recommendation for any leaders or just anyone that is an educator is definitely take into account that it is important that we need to take care of our team. We need to give people permission to not just talk about academics, but also talk about what you need in order for you to feel that mental wellness that we all talk about. And to me, self-care is not just about, although I fully support it, it's not just about, doing self-care outside of work. It's also about doing self-care at work. It's also my job as a leader to say, you know what, your contract hours are from 7:30 to 4. I need you gone by 4. I need you to take that time outside of work to take care of you, but also in work. And that means taking a break, having some food, asking for help. Those are all okay things to do. And I think that as leaders, we also need to acknowledge that people are walking into our campuses with unresolved trauma, triggers that they probably are unaware of. And as leaders, we need to give them permission in order to address them in any capacity that we're able to give them. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mariela, thank you so much. And I think hearing you share this and then seeing you actually live this is such a cool experience I'm having that I just feel very grateful for, in the ways that you model and truly live this with your staff, not just share it. So I think that's really exciting to witness. And I'm so thrilled now to turn it over to our final fellow, Roberta. And please, we can have a bit of a buffer. So take your time and share, and we can, again, take notes of questions you have for anybody or uplifts you have. Yes, let me give it to Roberta.
Thank you, Bree. Thank you, Mariela. Thank you, Camden. I'm going to invite everyone right now actually to take a pause from the screen. And if you'd like, you can close your eyes or look away from the screen. And I'm going to start with a question that I posed to the teachers when I offered the workshop that I'm about to share with you. And that question is, think of a time when you gave flowers to someone you knew who was grieving. What flowers did you give? Why did you choose these flowers? What was the gift of these flowers? Now think of a time when you received flowers from someone when you were grieving. What flowers did you receive? What did these flowers mean to you? And what was the gift of these flowers? Okay. I invite you to open your eyes or come back to the screen. If you'd like to, feel free to write just the name of the flowers in the chat. Either the flowers you thought of that you received or the flowers that you gave. And now, in the spirit of the power of story, which Camden reminded us all, I'm going to share my story with you. So on a warm, sunny afternoon last month, I posed these questions to the teachers of Golden Bridges School, a small, independent, Waldorf-inspired farm school dedicated to social justice, where my son has been a student for the last 9 years, and where I previously served as faculty chair during the pandemic. I stood in the circle of teachers on our school farm, Hawk Creek Farm, as a special guest. We were surrounded by the plants in our early childhood garden, such as the borage, which you see here in this picture on the left, chamomile, lemon verbena, nasturtium, lavender, California sagebrush, and our wild fennel forest. And after asking the teachers the same questions that I just posed to you, I invited the teachers to pick one of the flowers and to draw them with colored pencils on paper. I'm going to share, actually, could you go to the second slide for a moment? This is one of the drawings that one of the teachers made of daisies. It's another drawing that one of the teachers made. This was made by our pedagogical director, who now serves the school in the role that I did when I was a school leader. You could go back to the first slide. Thank you, Bree. And I use this art activity as an entry point into the conversation, as an invitation to our teachers to connect their lived experiences, both their personal and professional experiences, with our exploration of grief. So after creating a framework for them about different forms of grief, I reminded everyone that for many years now, I've advocated for having a school counselor at our school. We're a very small school. We have a small staff. And this is something I've advocated for many years. But I shared with them that one of the things that I've learned from SCRR is that even when students are provided trained professionals to help them process grief, students share that they still want to process with their teachers, that they want to talk with someone they're in a relationship with and who knows them and who they're going to continue to have a relationship with. So this was a profound learning for me from the fellowship, because a lot of the time I thought if we only had a school counselor, we'd have someone to support things at our school. So taking this learning, I pose these essential questions to the teachers. How do we make space for grief when it shows up in the classroom? How do we make space for our students, for their families, for our colleagues, for ourselves? And what practices, rituals, tools, resources, and wisdom of experience can we share with each other to allow for grief and to allow for the process of healing from grief to be part of our work as educators? Bree, you can go to the second slide now. Thank you. So I had the teachers form pairs and then find a place in our garden and at our farm to share with each other. And after 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so, we came back together as a whole group to share what we had learned with each other. So one of the things that happened during this workshop was that when I invited the teachers to find a partner for the pair share, one teacher shook her head no and told others, I don't want a partner. I don't want to share. And she said she wasn't feeling ready to participate. So I overheard this and I motioned to her to come sit next to me. And I told her she didn't have to participate in the pair share. This teacher was my child's teacher. And in most Waldorf schools, like Golden Bridges School, teachers loop with their students. And my son's teacher has been his teacher for 9 years now. And in the 15 or 20 minutes when we sat next to each other, not doing the workshop exercise that I'd invited everyone else into, we just sat and talked. And in my lap, I was holding my son's main lesson book. The Waldorf Schools teachers guide students in creating their own textbooks by hand over the course of each school year, and teachers have the freedom to create curriculum for the students in front of them. And I shared with her the drawing that my son made in her class 2 years ago in the fall of 2021, when my sister died of COVID. And we just sat looking at his drawing, remembering that time in all of our lives and reflecting on what this drawing meant to each of us. She was trying to remember what the prompt was. And I reminded her that this was the beginning of a botany block. And she had invited the students to explore if they were a plant, what plant would they be? If they were to express their feelings in the form of a plant, what would it look like? And how would it grow? So when she did this exercise with the students, my son sat staring at a blank page and couldn't think of anything and wasn't drawing. And she came over to him and whispered in his ear, "What do you picture? What do you see? What do you feel?" And he said, "All I see is thorns." And she said, "Draw that." And we were reflecting on there's a single, can you go to the last slide, Bree? Sorry. There's a single bed here. What that single bed was. And for me now, that single bed represents not just his healing that he did in class with her, but also my own healing journey. And when we came back together as a group and shared our reflections with one another, she shared this question. I'm so sorry, Bree, can you go back to the second slide? she shared this question that she said she had really been grappling with this school year, which is, how do we teach and hold our students' grief at the same time? She teaches middle school, 7th grade, and she said right now she's grappling with the question of, how do we teach the history of the Middle East and what's happening in the world right now? And how do we hold the grief of our own students at the same time? How do we do both? So that question was the whole reason I created this workshop. And I want to offer it back to you now in another way. And that is, when we reach for that which we care about most, that which we love, and it's no longer there, and we feel a hole, how to remember and feel the wholeness of our being. And how do we do that for ourselves? How do we do that for our colleagues? How do we do that for our students and their families? So I just want to thank SCRR for the opportunity to do this learning in community with peers, and under the guidance of mentors, and share that what I've really learned through that experience and in my years as a collaborator with the teachers at Golden Bridges School is that when we center our own healing, we also support the healing of others. And that this healing is necessary, and that this healing is possible, and this healing is transformative.
Oh my goodness. What a gift you just gave us. I think about the weaving of art, the weaving in of nature, and just the invitation that you gave teachers to slow down and reflect and just be in a space where educators often don't get to do that. So thank you for your wisdom and insights. Truly, truly. I'm going to stop sharing and just give an invitation. I'll also unpin you so you feel, and I'd encourage you to put it in gallery mode. If it's not in gallery mode, if you're in a spot to turn on your cameras, please do so. And I would love to just use emoji reactions, some way to just show care and gratitude for the fellows who just shared with us. So my audience, please give flowers, give love, give care to them for their time. And then I would love to just make space. We'll go back into the main room around noon 15, 12:15. And so I'd love to have you all ask questions, give flowers to model Roberta's lovely offering for us to our fellows. Questions, clarifying points, additional information you want, feel free to come off mute and share that, or put it in the chat, and we'll have about 6 minutes for a little Q&A time. Thank you, Candace, for your comment in the chat. Challenging to try to manage both teaching and grieving and crisis at the same time. Absolutely.
Do I have sound?
Yes, you have sound, Leslie. We can hear you.
So exciting. I haven't had sound for like 2 days.
Welcome back.
Yes. I really appreciated listening to the very different approaches. And I think especially because I tend to make things big and think in my head, it has to be hugely complex and, hit tons of people all at once. And it's very validating to hear about your work, which is targeted and not super complex, but instead super real and in the moment and present with folks. So that was very, I think, very helpful for my own framing of like, oh, I don't have to think to myself, I'm not doing enough because it's not big and complex. So thank you.
Thank you for that. It's a really good common theme and a really good insight. I needed that reminder today too, I think. Yeah, Cherry.
I always think it's interesting how most jobs have bereavement days. You get 5 days for a parent or whatever. Like you can put a time frame on grief. That's always been very odd to me. And so with these comments in the chat about it's challenging to manage teaching and grieving and things like that. So your activity, Roberta, is so profound because so many people have to go back to work after a death and are not fortunate enough to be able to take whatever time they need. I remember when my father died when I was 18, my mom just happened to be working at her job for almost 30 years. So she had goobles of time, right? So she took off 2 months from work, but how many people can do that? You know? So, and how many jobs have activities like this for their staff members? So this is wonderful. I really appreciated it.
Thanks for that, Jerry. Appreciate it. Any other questions or wonderings you have for our fellows who shared with us today? Practicing my good teacher wait time. Well, I'd be curious to hear from the fellows when you take a look at the folks in the room. What is a challenge or a hope that you have for them in their work when you think about what you presented on? If you had to offer them phrase, a word, or even a task, right? Like Camden mentioned, we're not asking, we're tasking, which I think was so powerful. Based off of your work and what you see, what do you want to challenge or task folks on this call with? Feel free to share in whatever order you think, if my question makes sense.
I mean, I can go, and I think Leslie just really hit upon it well, and I think SCRR has done such a great job of simplicity. Like, we don't have to make it complex, just a conversation, just a question, and then listening is so powerful, individually, collectively. So just lean in to one pondering and have a conversation, and then it builds from there.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's just starting the work. I think that a lot of us, if not all of us in this room, have these brilliant, wonderful, transformative ideas, and they just stay as an idea. And the thing is, I think that we also need to learn to trust the team that we work with, the people that we work with, that they're also going to lead a lot of whatever it is that we want. We have cheerleaders on our own teams that are going to give us ideas or just take our idea and be like, you know what, let's make it happen. So I don't always have to have the answers. I think that a lot of times we forget that we don't always need to have the answers and the perfect ideas. I think we just need to have an idea, throw it out there, and see what happens. And then beautiful things happen.
Yeah. Roberta?
Yeah, I want to echo Camden and Mariela that, and this was my insight from processing and reflecting on the workshop with my mentor, Oriana, that the conversation itself is the gift. The questions themselves are the gift. The exploration is the gift. and being present in this moment for all that's rising is the way to find the answers.
Cool. I'm like taking notes on all of our nuggets on the side. Thank you all so much. Again, warm fuzzies and great joy offering to our fellows. Thank you for your wisdom and insights. We'll be heading back to the main room, take a little bit of a break, and then we'll dive into round 2. So thankful. Feel free to drop some flowers, some praise, some words of encouragement for our fellows in the chat. And these breakout rooms will close in 30 seconds. So we will see you in the main room. Thank you.